They have two
All right,
places
on here.
down on the beach
Recording?
in South Carolina, so we stayed with them for a couple of
We are
nights.
recording, yes.
I was gonna play golf with Michael, but then it was cold and they closed it.
We are recording?
We are recording, yes.
Oops. Sorry about that.
March 22 meeting of the Long Hill Township Planning Board is called to order at
7:33.
7:33. Thank you. Can we have the announcements, please?
Yes. Number one, call to order and statement of compliance. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the public meeting dates on the municipal bulletin board and website, by sending a copy to the Echo Sentinel newspaper, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. Number two, meeting cutoff. Announcement is made that, as a matter of procedure, it is the intention of the planning board not to continue any matter past 10:30 p.m. at any regular or special meeting of the board unless a motion is passed by the members then present to extend the meeting to a later specified cutoff time. Number three, electronic devices. All in attendance are asked to mute cell phones or any electronic devices as to not interfere with the proceedings. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's not me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not me.
Mine. Guilty.
That's,
Both of us said.
Roll call.
Committeeman Ray.
I'm good. Present.
Committeeman Verleza is excused this evening. Ms. Still.
Present.
Mr. Hands.
Here.
Mr. Jones is currently absent and will, I believe, be joining us later. Mr. Malinowski is currently absent. Mr. File.
Here.
Vice Chairman Richardson.
Here.
Chairman Sandow.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
I would like to make an announcement or two before we get started. This meeting is being held in the courtroom, just like in the old days, and it is being broadcast on Long Hill Television, just like in the old days. It is not being carried on Zoom for two reasons. First of all, there is no opportunity at any time during this meeting for public comment. And secondly, there was some confusion broadcasting the zoning board meeting last week, and until that confusion is resolved, I didn't want to go on with Zoom broadcasts for the planning board. And as long as all our members are able to get to the courtroom, we'll leave Zoom as an option depending on whether or not they can fix the problem that occurred at the zoning board last week.
We already fixed it.
Huh?
We already fixed it.
I haven't seen it fixed.
You
And
did.
it was atrocious. There was an echo beyond belief, and that after a year of doing Zoom meetings, well, enough said. So at any rate, if you are watching on television, please enjoy the meeting. We are going to be talking about some choices that are going to be made to the master plan. You may or may not agree with what you hear, but there will be ample opportunity when the master plan elements come up for hearing. There'll be ample opportunity for you to express your opinion then. We're not going to solicit opinions tonight. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting of February 22nd. Does anyone have any comments? I have a question on page 1.
Go ahead.
The asterisk next to Mr. Verleza's name, which says Committeeman Verleza joined the meeting at 7:39.
Okay.
There is a similar asterisk next to Mr. Jones.
Yes, there should not be an asterisk next to Mr. Jones.
There should not?
There should not. I believe he was, I'll double check the record, but I believe he was on time that meeting, and Committeeman Ray joined us a little bit late, so he's the second asterisk.
Okay. That's the only question I have. Any other questions about the minutes?
No.
I hear a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is the resolution to adopt the findings in the matter of New Jersey American Water Company at 342 Valley Road for what was essentially a fence application. Does anyone have any questions on that? Our attorney, I believe, is on the line.
I am, and I'm speaking, well, that was a two-syllable word, so my apologies.
At the top of page 4,
Okay.
Mr. Slota's title is probably senior engineer.
You are correct.
Does anyone have any other catches?
A very minor one, if nobody else has anything more substantive.
Say again?
Only something very minor, unless anybody else has anything more substantive.
No, go ahead with minor.
Very last, the last sentence says absent myself. I think I was present for it. New Jersey Water. 2 meetings, we voted, right? You put me down as absent. Deb, can you just double
I
checking?
think this is the one, didn't you have to view a thing
No.
to catch up? Is
No,
this
no,
the
no.
That was
That's the
another
other one.
application?
No, I was
New Jer-
present.
Oh, that, you know what, that'll be corrected at the final. I haven't, because Mr. Falvey is in there, as you can see, as that's kind of like just a standard template, so that's my,
Oh, yeah,
error.
Father, you're right. Good spot.
yes,
Good
because,
spot.
my apologies. So I did not fix that before
I
I
didn't
sent out the
spot it.
email, so I will be revising and correcting the, who would,
Maybe you're not the right.
you're acting as Mr. Falvey.
I don't know him, but I hope he's nice.
So yeah, so that will be corrected for the
One
final
of you's
resolution.
nice. You can decide which. Yeah, and do a favour, just, if you use the template one, take me out as not absent.
Nope, it will be corrected.
That's fine. That was the only thing I had.
I have a question for Ms. Lahaney on page 7. 1D as in David. The applicant shall comply with the recommendations in the memorandum of the board planner.
I don't have those other qualifications. Is that what you're gonna ask?
No, what I'm going to ask is, are those recommendations all agreeable to the board and to the applicant? And are they in fact relevant to this final resolution? Or is there some stuff in there that fell, in your recommendations, that might have fallen by the wayside?
Well, actually, this is standard language that goes in the resolutions about referring to my letter, and I often don't actually have recommendations in my letter. They're more typical of the engineer's letter. So I think that, I mean, my letter, I don't believe has any recommendations that the applicant would need to adhere to in order to be compliant.
So strike D then, or?
On the last page, Amanda,
Yes?
last page, number 5, last line. Pay in full any and all taxes, fees, and other sums owed the township before any certificate of occupancy shall issue for the property. Does a fence require a certificate of occupancy?
Does not. I don't believe it does, anyway.
Nope.
I will take that out. It would be a permit.
Actually, if it's below 6 feet, it does not even require a construction permit.
Ooh. Okay, so then I will just take out the before any certificate is issued, et cetera.
So what will you do with number 5? State the entire text of number 5 and you're finished with it?
Sure. All fees assessed by the Township of Long Hill for this application and the hearing shall be paid prior to any construction. Thereafter, the applicant shall pay in full any and all taxes, fees, and any other sums owed to the township.
Okay.
And then on the prior page, did you want me to strike D, paragraph 1, subsection D? Regarding Ms. Lehenny's memo?
What do you recommend?
Sometimes we have it in there just in case there's a finding even that could be in the planner's memo or the engineer's memo, but it's fine, I can take it out.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution of memorialization in the matter of American Water?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
We have to take a roll call
Yeah,
vote
yeah.
on
Oh, we have to do a
resolutions.
roll call? Please.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Committeeman Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Dill,
Yes.
Mr. Hands,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson,
Yes.
Chairman Sandow,
Yes.
motion carries. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the resolution of memorialization for Elite Properties, 621 Valley Road. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this resolution?
If not, I have one.
I do have one question, maybe just a refinement to number 5, page 13. Is there any chance it says here, the applicant shall work with the township engineering and construction department to locate any ground-mounted HVAC equipment in a conforming location? Can we help specify that's least detrimental to the public or something along those lines if there's more than one conforming location?
A conforming location,
Supposing there's 2 conforming locations, could we get one that's least detrimental to the public?
yeah, I can add that.
Thank you. I'm thinking about the neighbour, if you recall, if we can do something there.
Right.
I think we
I can add that.
discussed that, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Without making it too onerous.
And the question that I had was, Mr. Orth, he was the applicant's attorney on this case. He had asked me about condition 20. It is I believe it's 1 year to start construction. And he had said he knows he's not gonna have the TWA approval within a year. Is it possible for us to extend that? I wasn't sure what the board's practice typically is. I know that sometimes they don't do that, or they just make them come in for an extension pro forma. But I defer to the board. If the board typically allows for a longer period of time, then we can do that.
What number was that? Can you repeat the number?
20. Oh, sorry, page 15, number 20.
Oh, 15.
We're having a very hard time hearing her.
Oh, you mean on the resolution part? The numbers change differently between the different resolutions. Gotcha.
Yes. So, in short, does the board normally allow for a longer period of time for construction to commence? Or would they prefer that the applicant just returns and gets an extension?
I'm sorry, I still don't have the paragraph number.
Number 20. James.
On the last page.
The last one, second to last.
Actually, the last page.
Deborah, I don't recall us being in resolutions that we've had before. The time frame.
We did not have any such language in prison, I think, because in the discussions at the time, I was under the impression that there was some statutory language or
Yeah.
statutory knowledge that, when you're in a moratorium,
Yeah.
but I
I don't recall any that has come before this board since I've been on it,
Right.
that had that.
Oh, an extension?
Yeah,
They probably haven't needed it.
that commenced within 12 months.
You probably haven't needed it before.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, we should extend it, right?
Needless to say, they're not going to start construction until they've got a guaranteed
Correct.
sewer connection.
Sewer, yeah.
So
Right.
if you don't have something stated within the resolution, and Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, then that
Got it.
forces the applicant to come back every single year around this time now, just and pay a $200 fee. I think our extension for resolution is $200. So I think it's something for the board should consider, yes, to allow for a longer period of time based on the fact there's no sewer capacity.
Can we make it contingent upon the sewer capacity
Yeah.
becoming available?
Yeah,
Because the whole point is we want to,
Yeah.
we don't want them to just then sit on the property.
right.
Exactly.
That's fair. So 12 months
So-
after that point in time?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
what I,
So what is that period of time? The issuance of it? Or is it an approval by?
at such time that the sewer has adequate capacity for the application,
But
then
I
a
guess it's
year
good
from that
question of Who
point.
determines that and when will that be determined?
New Jersey American Water will determine that. So the
Okay.
applicant will have to keep in touch with New Jersey American Water, at which point they would inform us, you
But
know.
we'll know that date, the public will know that date too,
I would think the
presumably.
committee would know, absolutely.
Okay, Amanda, what you want to do is you want to dredge up the resolution of memorialization for the PRISM project in December of 2020, and you want to find out how we handled sewer ban in that resolution.
I sent, I'm sorry, Amanda, this is Liz. I sent a copy of that to Amanda earlier. It was silent on the issue. It didn't include any language.
So PRISM does not have this restriction in it?
No.
Then why are we putting it in here?
So if
Well,
it's
it's a statutory limitation. I mean, the ordinance exists that does say they have 12 months. So under the MLUL, it would expire pursuant to the limitations set forth in the ordinance, which here is 12 months. So since we have that provision in the ordinance, we do.
That's the law.
Hold on a second, guys. I cannot hear Amanda. Crosstalk going on between me and her. One-syllable words, Amanda.
That is a standard provision that we have to include because the approval would expire by limitation if there's an ordinance on point. So here we do have an ordinance on point that says 12 months. So in this case, that would expire because of the ordinance within 12 months. So if we want to extend that for them without them having to come back to us, we can do that.
Yes, seems like a reasonable idea.
But PRISM will have to come back, right?
Uh,
They'll have to come back on an annual basis.
I brought up that question. Liz, what did,
Amanda, you're saying that the local ordinance supersedes the MLUL? Because I think you had indicated that the MLUL permits 2 years if there's no, with site plan?
With site plan, right, it would run with the site plan, but that language isn't actually in the ordinance, so that puts us in kind of a weird position, because I know it's 2 years, but the ordinance says 12 months.
So the ordinance is stricter than the MLUL?
Yeah, because the town can regulate as it thinks fit. I have some towns that say 6 months, which is crazy.
It's interesting.
so the bottom line is we should have
Since-
language if
Si-
12
since-
months.
Since time is not critical to the applicant, I'd like to propose that we simply hold this resolution until we can work this out between the professionals. Does anybody object to that course of action?
No.
Okay, then let's just put this on hold.
But Dennis, do we really need to? I mean, I think we're all in favour of giving them an extension until at such times that I heard.
Well,
like 12 months
whatever
after.
is the reasonable thing to do. I don't know whether it's an extension or to just ignore any time limitation or grant them a variance from the ordinance. There's a lot of ways that this could be handled, and I leave it to the professionals to figure out what is the right way to do it, but under law.
But I thought that had been,
Yeah.
I thought that had already been proposed, and that's what we were being asked if we wanted to go ahead, grant the extension in the resolution, or just to have them come back on an annual basis.
Yeah, I thought, I had written down, I thought we had agreed that it would be 12 months after the availability of sewer capacity.
That's what I had in my notes, but I defer to the board.
I'm sorry, what was that, Amanda?
So that's what I had in my notes that I scribbled in there, but I defer to the board.
No, I think that's the easiest way to handle
And I did discuss this with Mr. Orth, the attorney, and he has no objections either way. So if the board wanted him to come back, he's fine with that. If the board wants to grant the relief, that's fine too.
As long as that triggering point of time is clear, right? If that's definitive time, then fine.
So what you are proposing now is an amendment to our vote on February 22nd to grant relief in the form of a deadline to start construction 12 months, within 12 months of the lifting of the sewer ban. Is that what you're proposing?
Yes, I don't think it was actually specifically addressed on the record, so the board didn't actually make a finding as to it. It's just one of the conditions that we have in the resolution.
So we need to amend the vote of February 22 before you can rewrite this resolution.
No, why would
No,
it?
it's just a condition.
It's just
So
a
it doesn't
It's just a
change
condition
any
of the
findings.
resolution.
I think it's just editing this language, just
Yeah.
one paragraph to say
Yeah.
upon issuance
Yeah.
from
Right.
New Jersey Water, or whatever the.
Yeah.
Okay, either way, we're going to have to see new text before we vote on this.
Okay, so then I will revise it and get it back to you guys.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anything else on the matters of these resolutions before we dismiss Amanda? Thank you so much for dragging yourself out this evening to join with us.
Yes, no problem. Have a good meeting.
Thanks, Amanda. Take care.
Bye.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion of the master plan committee's outline. And I would ask the members of the board to not use this as an opportunity to go far afield and reinvent the wheel that's been invented so many times since 2014, but rather to stick within the construction that the master plan committee is asking us to deal with. And with that, I will turn it over to Don.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess what I first wanted to say is, special thanks to the Master Plan Committee that's been tirelessly working to pull a lot of this information together, and of course, our esteemed board planning professional, Ms. Lehaney, who's been a fabulous resource in helping to pull together this process. Just to remind everyone, just real quickly, the process is a 3-step process, and we're in step 1, or task 1, which is to take more of a macroscopic view with respect to assembling goals and objectives for each of the elements. That's what we're here tonight to discuss, because then that will then inform us as a master plan committee to go on to the next step with a roadmap, so to speak, to build upon those goals and objectives as we proceed into the recommendation stage. That's when we get into more details with regards to recommendations to help build out the goals and objectives. And then finally, the last task that will happen hopefully by the fall would be then to draft the master plan. So I very much believe that this process will help steer us in the direction we need to be steered to complete this, hopefully within the year. That is the goal. And I believe we are on track based on our time schedule if we can complete this step tonight and move forward. So with that, I think the best probably way to handle it, unless any of my other members of the committee have any better ideas, or Ms. Lehaney has a better idea, is to get feedback from the non-committee members. We've looked at this, we've beat this pretty hard, but we have no pride of authorship. We are looking for input and to make sure and to ensure that we're all all working in the same direction here. So I guess I would ask, maybe we could start with Teresa in regards to some comments you have as we kind of go around the DS here.
I prefer you start with someone else.
Good
This
thought.
is
You look
my
like the
first
most
go.
prepared.
Yeah, I'm the least prepared. No. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd rather.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Ray,
Um,
Committeeman Ray, how are you prepared?
I think we're waiting on Tom. No, you know, I've looked over it, and I certainly, it looks, I mean, it's pretty obvious the amount of work that's gone into it. I mean, I think it covers just about everything that I could think of. I didn't think of anything else that wasn't necessarily covered in the specific goals. So, you know, I think this is this really is a great kind of roadmap for the creation of the elements and moving forward.
Great.
Can I ask, were there any specific goals or or these sub goals within these goals that during your meetings presented any particular, I don't mean conflict in a negative way, but like just conflict that you would welcome thoughts on a particular area?
Just so I understand, so more from the standpoint of, you know, conflict amongst the committee trying to come to an
Yeah,
agreement
yeah.
on a particular goal?
Yeah.
I would say that we didn't really hit any particular issues. I think the effort was really calling out a lot of what had already been prepared and ruminated on better part of 6 years. So there was a lot of efforts, and especially the efforts from the last year or so, that really began to refine a lot of these goals and objectives. This was just a different way of kind of stating what the themes were. We really tried to, we hadn't spent a lot of time, and I think the focus here is on one of the most critical elements, which is the land use element. That's one of the, as you learned recently, is one of the key elements to the master plan is the land use element. It's a required element as well in the master plan. So those three goals, we had more goals and we kind of distilled them down. And with the help of Liz, really helped to better articulate them based on some of our discussions that we had in some of our meetings.
And Dawn, if there's some, you know, one thing really from the first page, we talked about, you know, you mentioned the sewer capacity, right? It's going to be increased, but at some point it's finite, right? We're not going to have any more sewer to support building. And then we have, you know, there's another statement in here to help address the township's affordable housing obligations. And there, I mean, again, I wonder, you know, given the fact that we're so prone to flooding, and we have the type of land that we have here, right? Where I wonder whether eventually the affordable housing obligation that's imposed upon us is something that we absolutely can't take on because of, you know, say if we don't have some means of stopping the river from flooding and drying out what we have, we could very well, you know, have reduced means to fight flooding because because of the affordable housing obligations that are being imposed. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are in this document of actually addressing those issues and using it, you know, as potential arguments to you know, stop some of the, or to ameliorate some of the effects of affordable housing.
Right. Yeah, and that touches into a sensitive area in regards to really addressing issues that might run afoul of the settlement that occurred. And we certainly don't want to do that. We want a plan that embraces that settlement discussion.
Right, oh, no, I mean,
Right.
this is more than the settlement, right? This is for, the settlement's going to be the next couple of years.
Right.
And it's pretty
Yeah,
much
and
set in
just to
stone, but
remind everybody,
the
this
only-
is a 10-year kind of planning horizon, because we have to go through this process,
Right.
every 10 years.
Yeah.
Really, it's a 20-year horizon you're supposed to think about, but it's hard to
Yeah.
get your head and hands around a 20-year horizon. 10 years is
Yeah.
probably sufficient.
Right, but yeah, that's what I'm
Right.
saying, so we have the settlement, and that's pretty much
Mhm.
set in stone as much
Yes.
as it possibly can be, but there's that, 2025 will be upon us, we'll have more for sure, and, we are gonna be running up against a capacity issue at the sewer plant, and we're gonna be, no matter what we do in terms of trying to mitigate flooding, we're still going to be running into issues there, and building on land right now
Right.
is only going to exacerbate that problem, and I'm just wondering how.
So,
could
so
address
the
that.
sentence starting on line 24, I don't know if that's one that you're pivoting around?
Yep.
If you have a suggestion on how to improve that, because we did directly address this, and we were very cognizant and spoke a lot about the stormwater and flooding related issues. In fact, we really, we allowed that to come up into the land use.
Mhm.
That was one big topic of discussion, was we can't suppress this to a conservation element, that flooding is such a integral issue in the town.
Mhm.
We need to address that, in a much more forthright way. Does that sentence there, in regards to better capture, we tried to use the word, the balancing of those realities?
Well, what
in
I'm
that
troubled
sentence?
with in that sentence is changing natural climate has led to large-scale flooding. We've had large-scale flooding documented in the newspaper since the 1920s. That's at least 100 years' worth of documented flooding. It has nothing to do with changing natural climate. Changing natural climate may or may not have made it measurably or immeasurably worse. But flooding is not a climate-related issue. It's a floodplain-related issue, and we have to trace that back 14,000 years to when the glaciers did what they did to Long Hill. So I would take out the reference to changing natural climate.
Well, let's, before we start editing, I just want to come back, because I think, Brendan's on to an interesting topic, and I just want to address that issue in regards to what I'm hearing, Brendan, is the finite nature of the sewer capacity, number one, and the reality, whatever it might be, of the increased risk of flooding
Right.
in the town.
Yeah.
And how do we better deal with both those issues with this plan?
Yeah, especially when it comes to the affordable housing obligations, because
Right.
those are things that we would never probably undertake on ourselves, I would imagine. We would never think about building the way that we, even just with the settlement agreement, what we've had to do here, right? And so we're kind of almost like saying, well, we're under the obligation, all of this affordable housing obligation, and we always will be, and we just have to accept it. But the reality of the situation, I think, is that there has to be some statement somewhere that we can't actually do it. One being the physical capacity that we have for sewers, and the other one is the fact that we have this flooding issue, and this type of development is only exacerbating it. And I'm just wondering whether, and maybe this isn't the document that we do it in, and maybe I just was wondering whether you as a committee, you had kind of thought of those two things in relation to affordable housing, and if it was something that you thought you would even want to touch in this particular version of the master plan.
Can I
Yeah.
just say something?
Yes,
Okay,
please,
Sure.
please, yeah.
No, I mean, I think when I had, because I took the initial draft, and what I was trying to get at was that there's all these things that Long Hill's trying to balance, which is you do have flooding issues, you do have sewer capacity, but you also have like a predominantly single family, not entirely, but predominantly single family. And you've had to have, to fulfill your affordable housing obligations, you've had to create housing that doesn't exist in Long Hill currently. And it was sort of, so you're trying to, on the one hand, you're trying to protect a certain community character, and on the other hand, you have, you're under a statutory obligation. And in some ways, what I was trying to get at with this paragraph is you've got a few balls in the air. And it wasn't necessarily, I mean, not my intention initially, wasn't necessarily to take a position, but was to more or less say, look, these are all the things that, these are all the balls that are in play.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things with the goals and the objectives with regard to affordable housing was sort of saying, listen, we know we have to do it,
Right.
but like, we also have to take into account its relationship to existing neighborhoods, its relationship to the existing infrastructure, and the relationship to the future capacity. And I think it's I'm trying to get at, or I don't know, and the committee can tell me if they agree. But it's sort of trying to get at the idea that, yeah, okay, we know there's certain things, but we also have to balance it with all of these other concerns we have.
Right.
Yeah,
And if I could, sorry, if I could just say this, one, because that's an it's an interesting point, right? And if you were dealing with, reasonableness out there, then yeah, that would be those would all be great points. But I don't think the powers that be here don't really care about what's happening. The difference that it makes in neighbourhoods. That's just not something that they necessarily care about, and they've shown that, right? Not here and everywhere else. And the capacity issues, they're just, it's almost been like, we don't care, you're going to do it, and that's it. Even if we hadn't sold it, we would have had to have made all those improvements ourselves, and nobody would have cared, right, about the effect it would have had on the community. But so those are things that they obviously they can kind of just dismiss, right? Reasonable people wouldn't necessarily do that, but they have been dismissed. But the one thing that we have is that it's a fundamental flaw that we have here is we're prone to flooding, right? And so how do we at least make it plain in this document that this is a real issue that we just can't avoid, and so these types of obligations are just keep mounting every day, every 5 years they just come back, and then there's more and more. That there comes a point where we really can't do it, and it's not because we don't want to; it's because we physically just it's not good for the town and the problem that we have of flooding.
Brendan, so from that good discussion, from that viewpoint, are you trying to argue for or against something like the flood wall? Are you trying to make this as we've got to do the flood wall because we've put that as consequences, or we maybe we can't because there's too many.
Right,
I just trying to wonder where you're.
I mean, I'm not making this an argument for the flood wall by any manner of means. I mean, if anything, it should be a kind of holistic. Hey, let's look at what we can do and let's do as many of them as we possibly can. And the flood wall is, I think, it's still pie in the sky, right? We still don't have any money to do it. So it's just it's an idea among many ideas. But I think over the long term. We're going to have the issue of flooding. That's just something we're absolutely going to have, and we have to face up to it, right? There's going to be some level of
I'm just wondering, though, Brendan. I'm wondering if this was sufficient in capturing the different balls we're juggling, and that really what we'd be addressing is this in recommendations, which is the next step, where we get very and much more specific to address these issues, whether it's a flood wall or whether it's buying up more open space to deal and create more storage capacity in our floodplain.
Or whether it's just not necessarily building, to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
And that really was, that I guess
Yeah.
was the point of
Right.
my question. It was I just wanted to make sure that we address it
Yeah.
fully in this document, because
Right.
it seems that that's going to be the
That's
main threat to the community.
So do you think a bit more emphasis on this sentence to strengthen it, perhaps?
I think the
As-
sentence should say, oh, sorry.
No, please.
Should say more what you were
Yeah.
trying to frankly say,
Yeah.
as opposed, being a little more direct
Yeah,
and specific, I think is fine, whether it's one or two sentences about
yeah,
the balancing.
yeah, that's good.
But as Don commented, really the next steps are the detail recommendations.
Right.
Yeah,
And we can certainly stress,
Yep.
the balancing act that we have to,
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's very good.
If you really break down this first, now that we're just really talking about this first page, is the first, we'll say 5 paragraphs are really the profile, and then the last 2 is really about the vision.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to break down a little bit of the structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the way, and this goes, to somebody who used to work in my firm, who was a partner for a long time, and I said, I used his style to write this, and they said, yeah, it was the best of times and the worst of times. And that's essentially exactly how, Long Hill's so wonderful, but,
Right. You got these down.
drama, terror looms.
There's no parts in the master plan.
Yeah,
It's all rainbows and daisies,
yeah.
Right.
waterlogged as they may be.
Yeah.
That's
Under
good.
the land use goals, when you have goal 3, I don't know if it would be adding an objective or expanding on one of these, unless, again, I'm just like misinterpreting what's here. Do you want to get more specific about, like, flooding in particular? Like, I see that you say, natural hazards and climate change related impacts, and then an integrated hazard mitigation approach, but I'm just not seeing anything about like our specific.
Yeah.
Well, the implicitness of the natural hazard is the flooding.
Right.
Without saying it, I guess, natural hazards could also be, slope failure and all kinds of other things. Earthquakes, which we're probably not going to get, I hope.
But I don't see any harm in
I guess
adding.
like another objective.
Right.
Right.
Like another objective to.
Or again, that one thing we really wrestled with, Teresa, too, is trying to keep objectives really related to goals and not slipping into recommendations.
Okay.
But,
Yeah,
this
fair.
is all really excellent feedback, because then we can take this feedback that's from this discussion to really then carve out the recommendations that flow from these. So unless we've totally missed something in regards to the broad stroke, that's what we're really trying to capture tonight.
You don't want it to say like we want to do this about flooding.
No, that would be a
Right,
recommendation.
Well, that's in the next step.
But don't see any harm about emphasising flooding a little bit
And there's a
specifically
long
through this.
list of those.
Oh, that's good feedback. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's
let's
good.
not be shy about using the word.
Yes, right.
So, Mr. Sandow, we're getting around to the DS. It's your turn.
I'm wondering if maybe we're not missing the boat by stating firmly and clearly on the first page in the introduction that there is no way that we can maintain and enhance the valued, I'm at line 30, enhance its valued community character. Because as a practical matter, we're in affordable housing, we're in multifamily housing, and it's only going to get different. We're not going to be able to control it, and the character of Long Hill, like the character of all suburban communities in New Jersey, is going to change because of affordable housing. And maybe if we state that up front, and I'm thinking about line 21, where we start out by talking about increased sewer capacity, and hidden in that sentence is a statement about multifamily housing. Maybe we ought to face reality, bite the bullet, and say the character has to be preserved within the context of the changing residential character of the town. which is beyond our control. Let's plan for it, instead of sweeping it under the rug and then having it bite us when we least expect it because we didn't actually make plans for it or admit that we have to make plans for it.
And down on page, or on line 29, you don't feel like that sentence doesn't at least address what you're speaking to?
You want to preserve and maintain and enhance its valued community character, and we can't do that.
Of course we can.
Yeah, well,
Of course we can.
strive to maintain.
I'm not interested in a debate. I'm making a
Right.
suggestion.
Right. But I'm making another suggestion. Of
All right,
course we can.
may I have the floor, please?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go for it.
We need to come out forthright that this is going to happen and not bury it in clauses, in sentences that address something else. Because very much of what we write in this master plan, especially in land use, as well as the community services and utilities and the rest, is going to have to accommodate affordable housing. And since affordable housing is only 1/7 of the growth that we're going to see, it's got to accommodate a multifamily character that we have not. Right now, all the multifamily housing in the town is by exception. We've created little zones here and there for individual multifamily projects. But this is going to be a much bigger deal in the next 10 years, and it ought to be right here on page 1.
I think it's a fair, personally, I think it's a fair point.
So do you have a suggested modification
Yeah.
to?
No, I have not attempted to rewrite. I've just,
So I just think we just have to add on a piece about some of this is going to be forced upon us outside of our control, but we need to recognise because we have history with it, and it's
Yeah.
going to continue.
Yeah.
So we just need to, balance in the change. The change is going to be change that we can dictate to a degree, and some is going to be dictated upon us.
So
So I think
really,
that's-
we're
that's
talking
right.
about making a modification. I'm just trying to distinguish again between the profile paragraphs and the vision paragraphs.
I
So,
think about the end of line.
Mr. Sandow, though, you're suggesting that the change happen forthright in the vision paragraph?
yes,
Okay.
I think that you can take pieces that are
Yep.
buried in paragraphs 5 and 6 and make a standalone statement out of them.
Oh, that's fine. I think that's good.
Okay. But,
And I realize that that's going to
We can.
concern a lot of people who talk about the valued community character, but no matter where they moved into in New Jersey, this is a reality they're going to have to face.
what if we change the word character to something like assets, like the community assets, that you want to maintain as much of that as you can in the, no?
Well, the problem at line 31 with the word character is that nowhere have we actually described what that character is.
Okay.
Well, yes, we have. In the first sentence, we described, that is the character statement.
I
There's
think
a
we,
low-density, predominantly residential suburban community.
Okay, I guess I did not read that as being as strong as you think it is.
personally, I think we've got two good observations to strengthen a couple of points.
Yeah.
Flooding and
You have to remember that
dictation.
You have to remember that 100 years ago, the farmers in this community didn't like the notion of building new schools because those schools that we built in the 1930s were going to attract a whole lot of commuters
Right.
who built the neighborhoods that some of us live in.
Sure.
And that changed the character of the town. The closing of the mills in Sterling and the quarry in West Millington changed the character of the town. So the character that we are looking at right now doesn't trace back to the agricultural roots.
Correct.
And I think we need to be honest about the fact that we're not preserving the agricultural roots. I mean, let's face it, farmland does not covered 100% with trees.
Yeah.
And yet we seem to think the trees preserve our roots.
And we address that comes up in the historical element, that
Totally original.
Yeah,
specific history of growth with the trains and anyway.
Right.
So I think that gets covered nicely.
I think that, like, there's an argument to be made that Long Hill, more than any other town around us, has, I wasn't alive in the 30s, so I don't remember, but I think we're probably very different from them, but I think we've preserved part of that historic character that, has been around since then. And so I think if we make an effort to do this, we still can preserve, even in a changing, we became a commuter town, and now we're gonna become a more populated town with different, varieties of people living here, not just families, but I think it is important to still preserve that, because I think we did preserve some of our character over the years. So I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm just gonna advocate for the fact that we should
To expand on your thought, Teresa, 40 years ago, Warren Township was the epitome of preserving agricultural. Over the past 40 years, Warren Township has bitten the bullet. They have developed an enormous, thriving commercial center, which is doing very well, and which it continues to expand. And they have built housing far and above what we have built, and they are now building affordable housing in the hundreds and thousands, far and above what we're doing. And yet 40 years ago, they were a more agricultural community than we ever were.
but that's not what we wanna be, right?
well, I think we have a unique opportunity with a township with 3 train stations that connect us to a major city. We have a unique opportunity to, I think, capture the trend of satelliting. That's what a lot of companies are doing. They're not consolidating in the cities anymore. I think you're going to see more distributed networks of workers. And so how can we accommodate that in our planning for this town, given the fact that we have 3 commuter rail stations? So,
Anybody count cars in the Gillette station today?
yeah, it's doubled from what it was.
There were almost 30.
No, there were actually 20 cars instead of 3 cars.
Yeah, it's almost back to normal.
But it won't be.
And I'm not
Not
trying to
quite.
get off topic,
Yeah,
I'm trying to say,
right.
I like
Won't be.
this, I like saying we must strive to maintain our community character. I don't think we should change that. I think we've done that, I think we should continue to do that.
Right.
Just the addition of that sentence of
Right.
pressures.
But, some of these trends are what we would like to try to embrace and then call
Right.
out in some of the recommendations of how can we create a plan to accommodate. Because really, when you're planning, it's trying to figure out, using a football metaphor, is where's the ball going to land? We're going to throw the ball down the field. Is it going to land at the 20-yard line or go into the end zone? We're trying to figure out where the ball's going to land and thinking about this town in 10 years. That's a tough thing to do. It's hard to think about a year from now, just given what we've been through with the pandemic, so.
Yeah. Well, that's, if you take a step back, that's, managing this challenge is
Yeah.
the job of the governing body with the help of the planning board. That's what
Right.
we're supposed to be doing. And if we recognize that, unlike the comment Mr. Chairman Sandow made, I think we're completely capable of managing that and preserving the community character. It's just, it has to be managed like any other process is managed.
Well, I mean,
We have great, we have great planners and great attorneys, and I think a pretty competent planning board, that's our job.
Right.
And the township committee has to direct us, in terms of what they want to see. But working together, we should be able to do this.
but, I mean, I think to Dennis's point, right, that, we've endeavoured to do that, right, maintain the character of the town, but just like, as Dennis said, in every suburban community, right, they've been robbed to a certain extent of that ability to govern their destiny. And, try as we might, preserve or this kind of character that you've captured in the first sentence, we might not be able to do it, right? Because the people who will move in just have a different outlook potentially on the people who are here now, right? And so I guess one of the things and I think maybe in the goals and the recommendations is probably, and it's more than we need to talk about tonight, but it's actually concrete steps as to how are we actually going to do that,
Well, and
if-
that's
if
why
we
we
can, how
allocated
we
better
do
part
it.
of 6 months to get through recommendations. I
absolutely.
mean,
No, no, yeah.
recommendations are
Yeah.
really
Say
the much
preserve.
more meat on the bone
And
from that standpoint.
And I think too, just from thinking the way that from the statement that Dennis said, Dennis's statement where we talk about, let's face up to this, things are going to change around here. I think that probably it doesn't alter the goals necessarily, but probably the scope
Right.
of them, and then also your recommendations are within the context of that.
Right.
So.
I feel strongly about what you said too in regards to acknowledging some of the challenges. I just don't want to I don't want it written so that it's kind of a defeatist, like we're defeated by these issues. Because I don't think we are. I don't think
Right.
any community has the opportunity to change a trend that they don't like seeing, again, through whatever we do from a planning standpoint or passing ordinances or other things that we do mechanically.
I don't think we actually, do we use the word preserve though? Yeah. Where's the word preserve? I can't quite see it. We say maintain and enhance its value character.
Right.
I don't think we say preserve to say we're stuck in the past. We know we've got a history. Let's build upon the history, acknowledge there's going to be change, and
Right.
make the best of we can. I don't think we're preserving and saying it has to be this way, because it's going to everything changes. Right? One thing
Yes.
everything changes.
That's the only thing
So
we
I
can
would-
bank on is
I-
that there will be change.
As long as we don't use the word preserve and restrict and to the past, then fine. But we should learn,
That's a good
build,
comment. I don't
and
recall
grow
us
with it.
using the word
No, I don't
preserve.
see it. I said
That
it.
was my word that I.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We didn't.
So, but can I just carry on, just to continue that thought for a second, and hopefully it comes across here a little bit, at least for myself at least. We talk about enhancing the individual characters of the town. Minesville's different to Gillette. Sterling's different to Millington. Everybody's different to Valley Road, right?
I
And
mean, we
Millington-
talked a lot in our committee meeting about the branding,
That's right.
Right.
And
branding
Millington,
of each of.
and Gillette
the
wasn't even
communities.
in the prior master plan. So we really want to see if we, and Homestead, let's
Right.
not miss that Homestead. So we want to see how we can enhance those characters, make it, so it's not the same. It doesn't all become, sort of one homogeneous unit attached by Valley Road. These are separate, distinct, and let's build upon that character, use that character to give it a purpose and a sense of presence. So,
Well, that's-
I
that's
don't
what-
think anybody's trying to stick ourselves in the past.
Well, that's what you want to do in your recommendations.
That's right. So hopefully that comes across. And other things like public spaces we talked about. How do we get people, because as Don said, if people are going to start to work from home, even if it's a hybrid model, 2 days a week at home, 3 days a week at home, we're going to find more and more opportunities to outdoor dining. We should be encouraging those type of activities, so it does allow people. It's great to go meet somebody in the canteen at the office, but what do you do at lunchtime at home on your own? So let's sort of think about those things. So those sort of the public space, the public well-being becomes.
I think you said a key phrase is that you're always striving in a community to identify a sense of place. I mean, I think about, I lived out in the Rockaway area early in my tenure here in New Jersey, and I can always remember the sense of place was the Rockaway Town Square Mall. And it was just like, that was the sense of place for a township like Rockaway.
Yeah.
And how awful it was for, that's where you drop your kids off and we'll see you, later in the
Right.
evening, was the mall.
But we grew up in sort of Brendan and I, we're different environment.
Right.
Small towns.
Yes.
Town squares, especially in Europe, more so even in
Right.
England or even Scotland. But that's where you'd go and
Right.
have that cup of coffee.
Yep.
And later years, a beer.
Yep.
So,
Right.
those are the sort of things you did. So if we can just get people out.
Right.
And at the same time, we haven't tried to go, I don't think, Don, gone too far with the pedestrianisation of the town, with walkability and stuff. It's trying to be more modal all forms of transportation are valid, so not overly play the walkability side as well. So,
Well, that's good input. I mean, are folks with that discussion a little bit more comfortable with where we can take this concept of the profile and vision part, we'll call it the cover page to the whole master plan?
Oh, yeah, I think that addition of that one sentence or,
Mhm.
or editing.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So,
I'm not finished with page 1. Before you
I did-
attempt to summarize and move on, do you want to hear the rest of the comments?
I would love to get your input.
At line 12, quite frankly, I got stuck on the wording. I was looking for a cyber context and couldn't find it. And then finally decided that you meant automobile dependent, not auto dependent.
yes. Thank you.
At line 15, you've got two entirely different concepts in the same sentence.
That's starting with.
We've got underutilized and we've got vacant. And those are two different concepts. Underutilized property may or may not be redeveloped, and it makes a difference whether that underutilized property is residential or commercial. Vacant property may or may not be developable depending on who owns it, and more than 50% of the vacant property in town cannot be developed. So I don't think you can merge underutilized and vacant separated by a comma as if they were all the same thought.
Can I step in for a second?
Why not?
Do you want to keep going? You can.
Well,
Say
let's-
again?
let's-
No, I mean, the reason, I will say vacant is different from, let's say, preserved open space. It's a different tax, a different tax number, right? And the reason I group them together, honestly, is because when you go to argue how much land you have for affordable housing, COA and the courts and now Fair Share Housing look at vacant and not preserved open space. I mean, they're not looking at the Great Swamp. They're going to look at, a vacant site.
The town just bought another 8-acre lot that, for a huge amount of money, that was vacant land that could have been developed for housing.
Okay,
And
all
the
right.
town took it off the market.
All right, so hold on. So you have that vacant property, which could include a building, could be like a prism, it could be like that. But they look at underutilized properties. So they might look at like a failing shopping center and say, you know what, that would actually, you could redevelop that for housing.
Understand,
Yeah.
but we're not talking in the context only of mandated affordable housing. We're at line 12 of a 200-page document. Is this the place to start merging concepts?
I think this is trying to intend to give us a profile of what we have in an economy of words.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing that I was trying to get at, is I know that, and I hear it a lot at the zoning board, is everybody says we're semi-rural, we're semi-rural, we're semi-rural. And I know this board discussed for a while that we really aren't semi-rural anymore. You also, but the idea that it was semi-rural is sort of contradictory from the fact that you actually had a lot of manufacturing. So, I think the idea was to sort of say there are these two almost paradoxical.
Actually, we've got 3 small factories in town. We don't have a lot of manufacturing.
No.
We've got
you
3 small
did.
factories.
We did.
You did.
We did.
You did. And so the idea.
Not in the past 30 years.
No, the idea is that historically you did,
Right.
right? And so that was what was trying to.
2/3 of the voters in Long Hill have moved in since the industrial base disappeared.
Well, probably 3/4
All right.
died.
Well, correct me if I'm
Now,
wrong,
to-
this is just a profile statement.
Yeah,
This
that's
isn't,
right.
we're not
Yeah,
talking
moving on.
about what we're gonna do with
Right.
the underutilized
That's
and
exactly
vacant
right.
properties.
Right.
This is just describing what it is.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is you can't talk about what you can and can't do with underutilized and vacant properties, which you may be correct about, you probably are, but I think this is just a profile about it.
I think that in the introduction, we should make assertive statements about underutilized properties, of which we have a lot in the commercial districts, and we have a lot in the residential districts, but the futures of those underutilized properties are different. And we should make another statement about vacant properties, of which there are very few that can be utilized for anything.
I think that's just my opinion here for people to debate. Well, I don't want to get into debates, is that, again, this is at the 30,000 to 50,000 foot level. I think you're talking about getting into some
No,
details.
I'm talking about how we set the stage for the rest of the master plan.
Well,
And
do
as
we
Lewis
have,
Carroll's-
well, but let me just finish. Do we have underutilized properties in the town now? In your opinion?
How is that relevant?
Well,
How is the
It's a
word
profile.
underutilized relevant? What's it telling me?
it's telling you that it meets a certain category called being.
My house is underutilized because it only has one person living on more than an acre. Is that underutilized? Could we build an apartment house on my lot? Yes, my house is underutilized. My lot is underutilized, no question about it.
Yes,
And I would be happy to sell it to a developer who wants to build an apartment house there and house a dozen families. Because I'm allowed, what, 12 per acre? So we need to be careful. I'm going to quote Lewis Carroll now in Adventures Through the Looking Glass. He said, Humpty Dumpty said, "Words mean what I want them to mean. No more, no less." And so you need to explain what underutilized means if you want me to read it on the front page and expect that it's leading me somewhere.
No, you can put it in recommendations.
Liz, does that word have meaning?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
it
does vacant have meaning?
Yes.
Does a
It does.
comma have meaning?
I mean, yes, it
Right,
does. I
so
mean, I,
leave
there's
it
two
alone.
different things. Dennis.
I
Just
guess
leave
what
it.
the reason I like having it in there is that there are sites that maybe people think aren't vacant, although that's always going to be a shopping center.
Yeah.
And I've seen shopping centers become affordable housing sites because
Sure.
retail is challenging right
Right,
now.
done.
And so I guess I'd like, in the best of times, the worst of times, this is the worst of times, of sort of saying, you know what, these are things, some things you think aren't vacant, they actually still have development potential.
And I like the word remnants because it is the remnants of the first sentence, transitioning into now opportunity.
And I think you need to look at this sentence as a part of this entire page, not just pulling,
Right.
of course, if you pull the one sentence out and just talk about underutilized and vacant in its of itself, of course, you could talk about your house being underutilized. But you have to look at this whole page as a whole, which will make perfect sense with what you're saying too. I don't think what you're saying is incorrect for a different setting other than this first page.
Do you, if, is utilized throwing you, would you rather underdevelop?
But does it have meaning, that word?
Yeah,
If it
I
has
mean,
meaning, I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah,
If it has meaning, somebody can go off and say, look in land use law and say, oh, underutilized. Now I've got a definition. Now I understand it as a purpose.
Right.
If that purpose is what this intent is, then we're good. In my opinion.
So you're suggesting was
Utilization.
underdeveloped versus underutilized?
yeah, I mean, right.
I don't like underdeveloped.
No, nor do I.
Yeah.
That means that we've got to go and develop something.
okay, all right,
As opposed
okay.
to underutilized, because oh, good, that's open space now.
Yeah,
We have an underutilized bit of car park.
Why don't we just leave it alone?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm done. Move on.
Do you agree, Dennis, that when
Yeah.
you look at it as a whole, it makes more
It's fine,
sense?
Dennis.
I was just asked for an opinion. I'm not.
That's fair. You can't argue with that.
Do you,
Can't argue
do
with
you
that.
have more comments on the first
Can't
page?
argue with that.
Well, you want me to move on from page 1?
Please.
On page 2, I was very concerned that, about something you said 35 minutes ago, Don, the better part of 6 years. Well, I know what the better part of 6 years was. That's when we did the land use ordinance and dealt with downsizing, downzoning, and figured out a way to make 600 lots a little bit easier to get the job done. And then I had to reread the second page a couple times to figure out if that thought was carried over. And I think I finally found it in Goal 1, Objective 4. But it is so obscure that it took me 3 readings of this page to find it. And yet, probably, in my view, the most substantial planning that the master plan will do with regard to land use is, in fact, this item which comes from the zoning board every year, the downzoning issue. And yet, the wording is very obscure, and it's pretty much buried. And I would like to see a more prominent position because, after all, the zoning board gets these crappy little variances on undersized lots because we never get around to fixing a problem that was created in the 1950s when we made lot consolidation a township goal. Unfortunately, we never convinced the property owners that that was a good thing. So we still got a lot of small lots that people want to build bigger houses on or expand their houses. So I would give a little more prominence to the downzoning and the rationalization of zoning. There's about a dozen different aspects of this which are covered in the 2016 land use element draft, and some of them are pretty worthwhile objectives rather than being buried in this
Right, and I think a lot of those we've captured as recommendations.
Yeah.
So we have a
I'm
whole
sure
nother.
they will be, but
Right.
there's so many objectives here that are smoke.
Well,
That's fine.
if you, I mean, it's fine to make it the number 1 objective.
Yeah, we could just
Yeah.
reverse the order here.
But just and the word, and I think Dennis wants a little bit more
And if-
It needs to
modification.
be, it can be in recommendation.
And if it's
fine
very
as it is.
wordy, we can I can
Yeah,
reword
I
it.
think that
Because I have to say, I wrote this and I got some feedback from the master plan committee that it was a little
Yeah.
obtuse, so that's fine.
Well, this is my first chance to give feedback.
Uh,
Yes,
no,
and
no,
You'll
no,
have
no.
to bear with me.
No,
Oh,
no,
we-
I'm just
That's
saying
fine.
that you're not alone.
You're not
Right.
alone. It's fine.
Now, goal 2, objective 3. Supportive zoning and development regulations. Do you really think you're going to get to a point where you can make recommendations as to what would be supportive zoning and development regulations?
Yeah, I mean, this.
You
could-
really think you're going to get to the point of substantial recommendation here?
Yes, I mean, I think the idea of this is that perhaps business owners would say, you know what? The list of permitted uses is too narrow. We need more permitted uses in this various zones. Or they might say, you know what, we need, I'm just using this, I know this is a sensitive topic, but we need drive-throughs. Let's just say, post-COVID, we need drive-throughs. People expect, they don't want to get out of their car. These are the kinds of things we'll say, well, you know what? If I've seen this in other towns, if somebody is coming to a town and they don't allow drive-throughs, they'll say, forget it, we're going this over here. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we should permit drive-throughs, but I'm just saying
Right.
those are the
You're
kinds of
using that
things.
as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fine.
I'm going to go to the circulation goals now. Goal number 1, improve vehicular safety.
Dennis, before we go, can we just make sure everybody else, we'll move through each element and then we'll come to the circulation, is that okay?
Oh, well, I thought, all right, well, however you want to play it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure as we go through each of the elements, does anybody else have any other comments on the land use goals?
I guess the only other one, because we have discussed this a little bit,
Yeah.
and apologise for bringing
No,
it
and I
up.
think we should share some of our deliberations.
Bringing it up
there.
now is,
Yeah.
I use the word rationalisation of use. I mean, do we want to consider that? I know we don't want to get overly burdensome about uses and prohibited and non-prohibited, but I wonder if the word uses we should emphasise somewhere a little bit. Just a rationalisation, because my pet peeve.
Where would this fall
I'm
within the
thinking
land use? As a
objective
separate goal,
around,
or? where
around
you-
objective 4, a similar sort of area on goal 1. But I use my favourite example of Jaeger lumber, not permitted, long-time resident,
Mhm.
good corporate township resident, right? Good service, and they had troubles in doing some expansion work maybe about 4 years ago or so back, where there are other locations in Madison and somewhere else as well. Deb, you remember this, I think, as well. I think they sort of, everywhere was fine except for Sterling, except for Long Hill. So that's sort of how we can rationalise the use to make it less onerous where it is onerous, or in this case, possibly permitted where it's not permitted. That type of stuff. So just the word uses, I think, just maybe that helps.
Well, I think that's where we were getting at with the on the ground, right?
I
Those
agree.
Conditions.
Yeah, but as
I
Liz
mean,
said, we
that
did.
directly addresses the Jaeger.
Yeah, but maybe just a little bit more colour to that now we talk about it, just to make it a bit more explicit along with the downsides and words. If Liz, is that
Yeah,
reasonable
yes.
rather than, because I know we debated
Yeah,
that word in.
we can wordsmith this a little more, because it's
Mhm.
that's fine.
Because there's a lot in there, and I think Dennis, you're right. It probably just needs to be broken out. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, circulation goals. Dennis, would you like to kick off? We'll work around this.
Well, goal number 1, improve vehicular safety at key areas of concern. I don't know what the key areas of concern are.
I'll be list.
If anyone knows, tell me, otherwise I'll tell you what the key areas of concern are.
Myersville Circle, number 1.
Myersville
Almost get-
Circle is not a
almost get
problem. As long
sidewalk.
as you understand the rules, then
Get
Myersville Circle
sideswiped
is...
every morning there, just about.
Yeah, but if you understand the rules, you will not have a problem.
Well,
Live in town
somebody explain
20
the
years
rules.
to understand that rule.
There are no rules.
One at a time. One at a time.
That's the rule.
The rule is, there
Get
are
into the
no rules,
intersection
be
first.
damn careful. And if you understand that, then there is not a problem. It's only people who think that there are imaginary rules that don't really exist and who go flying through that are gonna get in trouble.
Not to get off topic,
And incidentally,
Yeah, go-
Myersville Circle is one of the most signed areas of town, so we don't need more signs that say, be careful.
not to get too far off topic.
Bad example. Go ahead, next.
My hometown. Only place you're going to find a big roundabout with 5 little ones around it. So you have to, as you're going round the roundabout, you have to be aware of these little roundabouts.
Oh, jeez.
So you think mine's
You're
going to
describing-
come to my hometown.
If you are describing roundabouts, David, you're going the wrong way by going this way. We go this way. The key area of concern, believe it or not, the worst traffic safety area in town is
Morristown and Mountain.
the ShopRite parking lot.
Well,
There are more accidents in the ShopRite parking lot than anywhere else in town combined.
Yeah, we can't do much about that.
yeah.
And I don't know how the master plan can deal with that. But that is my key area of concern. I don't like to park in the ShopRite parking lot because some damn fool's gonna hit me or I'm gonna hit somebody else backing out. And I don't know that that's a master plan issue.
It's not.
And in fact, since the planning board and the zoning ordinance can't cover traffic, I don't even know what this is doing in the master plan.
Well,
Oh, no, you can. You can absolutely identify, and I'll tell you why to do it. Is because if you have these areas, it can be, let's say there's an area where you think actually there needs to be one more lane, like a turning lane. You put it in your master plan, and then when you go to DOT, you say it's in the master plan. Like we have, we want funding to do this. Or, hey, DOT, since this is your road, or the county.
or the county, we got a lot of
This is your
counties.
road, and we have it in our master plan. This is so important to us. And so it actually, there is a rhyme or reason for putting it here, though in our capacity as a planning board, we really don't have
I
any.
can hardly wait to read the objectives and recommendations as to how you would implement goal 1.
I know, but I mean, there are places in town that could be better. I mean, Northfield Valley, just
Yep.
if you judge it by the number of accidents, that's one. I think it's Morristown and Mountain. That intersection is like Hell's Highway sometimes.
Right.
So
You don't have great visibility even coming off a division down from Millington onto
Exactly.
Valley.
Yep.
You know, you've got some bad lines of sight
Yeah.
coming out of there.
We have bad lines of sight in a number of places. in
Right,
town.
Yeah.
right. So that's, right.
Yeah, all right.
I'm on the objective, goal 2, objective 3. Continue to develop and maintain a multimodal trail system. Do we know what that encompasses in terms of recommendations? I think the word multimodal causes more trouble than it's worth.
I think we were trying to, from earlier discussions, get away from just saying pedestrian or just bicycle
Yep.
or saying all of them, is to kind of, because there
Yeah,
are
except
people,
bike
there are people on, you know, electric scooters to you name it. So we're trying to, we're trying to be, you know, ambidextrous and agnostic
Oh,
in
keep
our
in mind.
identification of vehicles.
The other thing, just before you answer, the other thing also is, when you say pedestrians, you also have to include people with wheelchairs who are not pedestrians. You know,
Right.
and so that there's accessibility there.
Yeah, I understand, but when I read the word multimodal, I immediately jumped to the conclusion that bike trails are paved, walking trails are not paved, and they don't know which they want. So I misread your intention with multimodal. Your intention was to mask the difference, and my reading of it was, you don't know the difference.
No. It's,
So would you rather it just say
It's fine.
maintain
Leave it
a
on.
trail system?
I'll leave it alone.
it's fine.
Okay.
We're good. We'll take it back, I'm sorry.
Now, objective number 4 is really wonderful. Provide for shared roadways which accommodate pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. And I hate to jump to conclusions, but I know exactly the recommendation for that. Widen and straighten Long Hill Road. And so when we get finished with the master plan, I'll expect to see widen and straighten Long Hill Road, because that's the way you accommodate, especially now that we've got the new law that says you got to give a bicyclist 4 foot of clearance when you pass him.
and a pedestrian.
Oh, is that right?
And a pedestrian.
4 foot?
Yep.
Do they bikes have to give 4 feet to each other when they go side by side? So it goes like the whole road?
I can tell you that doesn't.
But you can't cross the center line while you're doing it.
Probably right. Is that right, 4 foot?
So the only solution to this is to widen Long Hill Road and straighten it out, put some curbs in, put some striping in. This is a great recommendation, a great objective.
So that's one recommendation out of the way.
Yeah,
You've
thank you,
made-
perfect.
It's been written for you.
Didn't they just update the highway code in England where you
I was gonna put a
bikes-
zip line from my house down to the library here. That's really good multimodal.
And also objective number 6, the same thing. Straighten and widen Long Hill Road. Work with the county to implement pedestrian and bicycle favorable roadway design where possible.
So,
Right.
Long Hill's not possible, so next.
Well, if it's not possible, then why is it an objective?
Because it's not, this isn't the Long Hill master plan, Long Hill Road master.
Yeah, that's a, yeah, change your word there.
Right, this is the Long Hill, not the Long Hill Road.
All right.
Goal number 3 is interesting. Because there really is good stuff there.
Any other comments, Don, on the circulation?
Yeah,
You want to tell
Tom,
Tom
we've
where we
been
are?
going through, just to catch you up, the different elements. We're kind of threw into the circulation goals on,
Yeah, I sent through my,
170.
my recommendations and comments.
oh, you did? Oh,
You-
great.
Yeah, so you have it
Okay.
in an email. I sent that this morning,
Oh, thank you.
anticipating that it'd be late today.
Okay,
Cool.
excellent.
Actually, just in goal 3, working, that whole thing with working with other communities, I mean, I'd encourage that throughout, right, wherever we possibly
Yeah.
can.
I think it's gonna be important also with flooding.
That's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's right.
So Tom, just if you want to, and just talk, I don't know how specific, I didn't get your comments because I had been busy, but
That's fine.
if you want to talk in general, just to share with the committee where you had some comments.
Yeah, so on the introductory profile and version, or vision, you mentioned 4 of the villages, but you don't mention Homestead, so I called that out.
Sure.
So as long as we're
Tom?
going to...
Use your mic, please.
Oh.
Just pull it closer to you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's too late.
Huh, it's too late?
It's too late.
It's too late. So that was my first comment about Homestead. Line 10, you mentioned the transit stations. I would highlight that there's 3. That is pretty significant. I even called out bus routes, since you did mention proximity to 78, 287, and the train stations. In line 30 is the first time I picked up that we don't mention semi-rural. So I don't know if we could put that in the opening statement, in the opening paragraph, or we pick that up later.
We're out of that.
We're out of that? So semi-rural no more?
No more.
No more.
Okay.
We voted on that in January. That was our first master plan discussion, was in January. We decided to be suburban, low-density suburban.
Okay. I'll check the minutes on that. Line 68. I made my first comment about blue space. So I don't know if we add an objective there about blue space. So that section is land use goals. Goal number 3, it's mitigated vulnerabilities of natural hazards and climate change-related impacts. And I thought maybe that's where we introduce something about blue spaces.
Okay.
And I think that brings us to current on circulation.
Yeah, so, yeah, just so we can move on from circulation, did you have any other comments on?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to circulation, and that's part of my pet peeve, the including of sidewalks. Especially with what's, I read in the Echo Sentinel with regards to Chimney Rock and that property there, what the, what's playing out for consideration. We would want to think about sidewalks along Valley Road.
Yeah, and you saw that it's an objective here in goal 2,
Objective 1.
objective 1.
Yeah, but you don't mention it anywhere in the circulation. You talk about bicyclists, motorists, nothing about people. You mention pedestrian, but you don't specifically call out sidewalks. So I just thought that might be just something.
No, but maybe you missed, did you see goal 2, objective 1? Encourage the construction of sidewalks along appropriate roadways.
Line 75.
It's
Yeah.
split, it's at the very top of the next page, you may have missed it.
Yeah, I
way
went
this
right past that.
format.
I went right past that.
Okay, no, I mean, it's easy to miss because
Right,
it was kind of cut, it got split in the
Okay.
way that this is formatted.
Okay. No,
Okay,
thank you.
good. No, I just wanted to catch that.
Cool.
Good. All right,
A question about encouraging sidewalks.
mhm.
Most residents who do not have sidewalks, let me put it this way, many residents who do not have sidewalks would have 2 objections. First of all, are they expected to pay? And secondly, they then fall under the obligation to shovel the snow off those sidewalks within 12 hours.
My concern around sidewalks is along major roadways like Valley Road, moving into the business district zone.
That's all very well and good,
So
but...
I'm not overly concerned with residential areas having sidewalks, because it's not a high-traffic zone.
Okay,
That's why it says appropriate
Yeah,
roadways.
the
Right.
appropriate is saying not universally
Right.
saying
Correct.
it, it's more
Where it
just
makes
in certain
sense.
locations.
Correct.
because we have a few circumstances in town where property owners have sidewalks that they are obligated to maintain, and they have absolutely no interest or desire to maintain those sidewalks and shovel the snow.
Well, that sounds like an ordinance item that needs to be addressed, but I see that in my neighborhood.
Well, you know, once a sidewalk exists, you want children to use the sidewalk on their way to school and not walk in the street. But if the property owner doesn't feel an obligation to clear that sidewalk, you've now established an untenable situation.
Yeah, but Dennis, I mean, there's only one, there's one area in Mellington School, right, where it's like, where walking is encouraged, and we actually have sidewalks, and pretty much everybody, myself included, even sometimes whenever it's grudgingly, goes out there and shovels those sidewalks, make sure that they're shoveled for that very reason, because you know, very very often that clearance is enforced. But as far as the maintenance of the sidewalk itself, that's still the town's. That's still the town's responsibility. The actual maintenance of the physical sidewalk.
Like repairing the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That would be the town's responsibility, right.
That is the
But
town's.
it's a resident's responsibility that has a sidewalk on their property or easement
Yeah.
is responsible for clearing it.
For clearing
And if they don't clear it, then that becomes a finable offense.
That's interesting. So if a tree uproots and destroys the site, that's the town's
That's the town's
responsibility?
responsibility.
Takes care of it.
That's different than many towns.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good differentiator.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, many towns, it's
Yeah,
your
it's your
responsibility to deal with your sidewalk, period.
Yep. That's one of the problems with having sidewalks.
Right.
And a question, Mr. Ray. The new sidewalk at the intersection of Long Hill Road and Northfield Road, was that paid for by the homeowners, or was that paid for by the town?
The one that goes by my house?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, we got it through a grant. The town paid for it. but
The
that was-
town paid for it, but left the property owner with the obligation to maintain it.
Yeah, that's always been the case, yeah.
Did that increase or decrease the property value and the taxes?
All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm reticent to mandate anything in the master plan about sidewalks. That's my comment.
Okay. We got your comments duly noted. Open space, parks and recreation.
Incidentally, does anyone want to take a break?
If I take a break, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Just so you know, to be honest.
That makes two of us.
Because I'm.
Yeah, I think,
I get
hopefully
up
these
early
these
and
are a
I
lot
don't.
less contentious.
Yeah.
So it's up to you. Break, I leave, or
Yeah.
Let's
10, 15 minutes.
let's finish
I'll
this.
be honest with you.
You want to take a break?
I go home.
No.
No,
I took
No,
we want to
keep
have
going.
David stay.
I took a break on the train.
I was trying to
so
get
I'm
out
good.
of it.
Yeah, let's speed this up.
Right. Okay, open space, parks and recreation. Any?
I'll start with objective number 1. Why on earth would we encourage the ongoing acquisition of open space?
Well, there might be blue space.
Oh, why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
That would be my comment. That's what I sent to you, Don.
Yeah, no, I saw that, and that was good. I mean, the county.
Considering
we're
the
not
fact that
here
the
to-
town is more than 55% open space already, all non-taxable, all non-buildable,
Yeah.
And it turns out that the open space that we're buying, that we're acquiring, is open space because it is inherently and naturally unbuildable anyway. Otherwise, somebody would have built on it, and we're spending good money to buy swampland. Why would we want to encourage that? As long as it's privately owned open space, nobody's building on it because of restrictions, why would we want to acquire it?
Actually, that is buildable. Part of that is buildable. Part of it is wetlands.
Be careful what you say. We have an audience member who's emotional about this.
Yeah, but we purchased we purchased the wetlands with open space funds and used real money for the parts that are not wetlands. So I just wanted to correct your characterization of our purchase.
If I knock down my house, would you pay me a
All right, moving on.
value
No,
for the
because it's not
lot?
blue space.
Let's move on.
Let's move on, this is good.
So does anybody hear it?
But we have, sorry.
That's twice you want to sell your house.
But we do, there are properties in Long Hill that are sitting in wetlands that are just not buildable. And we have purchased some of those properties. You can see that there's evidence of that along White Bridge. And I think that's the right thing to do. So we should, where it's feasible and it makes good sense, we should do that.
Yeah.
And by the way, regulations can change.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
That's what
100%
you're
agree.
really protecting,
Yep.
especially wetlands. Okay, anything else on open space?
Objective number 2. We have talked for years, for decades, about enhancing the waterfront areas. And we never do it, and no one ever pesters us to do it. And you can't run a canoe launch if there's no water in the river, which is 95% of the time. The only people who use the river are fishermen, and they don't seem to be complaining. I don't see why enhancing waterfront areas is really an objective that the master plan wants to deal with. And if so, how would you recommend it, since most of the riverfront areas are private land anyway?
Let the recommendations take care of that.
Yep.
Well, I understand, and I'd be curious to read the recommendations if they're realistic.
That's right.
Good.
But as an objective, I'm not sure what purpose is served.
Well, we felt it was.
And this is a 10, 20-year plan we're working on.
Right.
Right,
I mean, personally, I'd love to be able to
Taking
walk down by the
right,
river.
right. We felt it was
Right.
worthy. That's
Yeah.
why it's there.
And I mean, the thing is that with the open space plan that we have, you can actually, I mean, it was, whether you can or you can't, but it was originally envisaged that you'd be able to walk along the river to a certain extent with some of the open space that had been purchased, and so it is there right now. I mean, there has been some idea behind this, and I think it's a great thing. If we could do it, it would be a wonderful thing to do.
I mean, you don't
It's such
need
a
to
great
look very
resource.
far, just go
Cheers.
down to Chatham Township and see what they've put in along the river there,
Yeah.
as well as when we were out doing a little tour around the back of the diner, Sterling Diner, et cetera, we saw a number of people walking along the river, if you remember,
Yeah.
That's right.
off that industrial
right.
area that we were looking at, behind the shop, right?
Yeah. And you could put a walkway on a flood
Right.
wall.
Right.
Just
So-
saying.
We will
Just
have recommendations that will wow you, Dennis.
I can hardly wait.
And look, some of it is,
You'll want to walk on them.
and look at, some of it is just to preserve it, leave it as is, don't
Right.
touch it.
That's right. That's also true.
Yeah.
Okay, historic preservation.
My first instinct is there, what is the governing body or the authority body that we follow? Is it HPAC, or is it the other historical?
HPAC.
Yeah.
It is HPAC?
Yep.
HVAC.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we want to note that there, or?
We will.
Maybe not.
It can be in the preamble or whatever, yeah.
It's certainly in the
Deep-
element.
Yes.
Deeper in, okay.
It's certainly
fine.
in the element, yeah.
Thank you.
And that was a requirement from the prior master plan as well, to create HPAC. I
Okay.
think.
There was a historic element presented to the planning board in 2018, and the planning board, after hours of debate, directed the master plan committee to go back to HPAC and get their recommendation for resolving it. To the best of my knowledge, that has not been done, but you guys are starting fresh, so I can hardly wait for your recommendations.
And just to correct, a lot of that was done and corrected.
Yep.
Not even corrected, it
Yep.
was continued on this path that was set.
Exactly.
So look, yeah,
Yeah, I know, a lot of work was
a
done.
lot of work done on that one.
Okay, moving right along, community facilities.
Well, I don't see any master plan issues here. This is all building maintenance.
Just to emphasise, this was already done, right?
Yep.
Community,
Was this one approved, or I thought
Yeah,
it was the
that's-
utilities?
no, community, so this one
Utilities
and
was approved
utilities.
too,
Two of
yeah.
them should be out there on the web as
Yeah.
done.
So it really would be just adopting those into one document.
Right.
Since they were adopted, we would probably reference that in the master plan of when they were adopted and bring them in.
Well, in the last master plan, we talked about maybe needing a new town hall. We talked about maybe needing Cantor Field, but in fact, as of the date of the last master plan, we had already purchased the land from Cantor Field, so that was a done deal. The master plan never talked about a new library.
But then
And in
instead,
fact, the library's master plan didn't talk about a new library either, but the money became suddenly available, so we went ahead and built a new library. We've already built a new public works building, and the police department is mandated to take advantage of the improvements we've made to their building and not talk about moving. So I don't see what the community facilities element, what value that might have going forward, whether we should just drop it.
well, it exists, it's already been passed. This is, and it doesn't refer to that, no, just,
Right.
that's now in the history.
Right.
So the
Already
element is, the master plan has been
on to what we have.
superseded by the element.
Right.
And that and utilities as well. We passed that about 2-3
Yeah,
years
I think
back.
that's all been updated.
This also, one aspect of this is, for example, let's just say that there, in the community surveys, people said, we want more senior programming. I don't know, I'm just saying.
Is it, if the town is willing to budget and pay for more senior programs, I'm sure that it can be done. But-
It's okay to put it in the master
But
plan.
is that really a master plan issue, or is that a social goody thingy?
It doesn't matter. It can go in the master plan. It's fine. I mean, this board doesn't have
Let's put anti-discrimination, everything in the master
No.
plan.
For example, this board doesn't have jurisdiction to say, oh, the police need to get a new headquarters. But if it's something that is a concern, it's okay to put that in the master plan.
All right.
Can we move on?
Okay, utilities, this one's been written.
Next.
Conservation, this one was.
What happened to utilities?
It's
It
already,
was
it's already adopted.
Say again?
It was adopted
It was already adopted.
by the
It's
planning
done.
board a couple of years ago. So
And
we're
our
just-
goal there is to ensure,
Yeah, it's an innocuous goal, but it essentially, what we would do is put what was already adopted and make any updates, because I think it was done before the sale of
Right.
the sewer system, wastewater
Right,
treatment.
so we would just update that language.
Yeah.
Right.
so is this an element that actually contributes to the master planning for Long Hill Township? Or is this just
It was done.
fill?
It was done, and we want to incorporate everything into one document.
Yeah.
Well, is it necessary to incorporate it, or can we cancel it?
We thought it was necessary.
We thought
We
it
can
was-
revisit in
Long
'23.
utility
Be-
sections?
A lot do. I think actually in Long Hill, since utilities are such a big topic, it's appropriate. I think if you didn't talk about your sewer system in your master
Right,
plan, that would be
right.
strange.
Right.
And because it's right on the Passaic.
Yeah.
But ensure the proper management of the various utility systems. Does that include telling Verizon to take down all those dead cables that are hung on Long Hill Road? Is that ensuring proper maintenance of
That
the
could be a
utilities?
recommendation.
It could be, and I'll tell you why. There are things like, with cell towers, but they're not cell towers, but there are things that go on top of every telephone pole, they're trying to get service. And you could have something in the master plan saying, if our approach to do this, we want to adopt an ordinance regulating that, or something along those lines. I think that is appropriate, actually.
And we have the authority to do things that the Public Utilities Commission is supposed to regulate?
There are certain things that if you're talking about phone service and mobile phone service, you have certain rights, of course, yeah, with ordinances. Not a lot, but you do have some.
Does this cover emergency, like radio?
That would be probably more in community facilities, actually.
Radios in the way for first responders?
Yeah, that would probably be in community
Okay.
facilities.
I would say if there's any concerns with this element, that we park it for 2023 and make it a book of work for 2023, since it's done now. I think we need to focus on the things that aren't done.
Yeah, but I mean, this is fairly easy. Again, we're trying to create a document where everything is in one place.
Yeah, agreed.
We've had a lot
I
of
support that.
disparate things
I support that.
floating around, much easier for referencing, et cetera.
I
So,
support that.
okay. Conservation goals, this is another element that was very far along with regards to its discussion. I think it had been presented in front of the planning board a couple of times, so.
The only thing I'd say, and I don't even know if this is the right place for it,
Yeah.
but Objective 2, preserve natural vegetation and wooded areas along the township's roadways. I mean, it would be prudent preservation, I guess, because what I'd like to see, maybe in the master plan, if it's appropriate, is that the town actually undertakes a regular, kind of annual inspection of trees and how they impact the power lines and things like that. I think
That's
we've
good.
done a
Blind spots on
Well,
corners.
as we
Yeah,
know, the utilities
Yeah.
hack the trees to death,
yeah, but I mean,
The blind
that's
spots
all
on
that-
corners,
Right.
you know.
so maybe something, if this is the right place to mention it, that would be a good thing.
No, that's a good one.
That's good.
Yeah.
Nice. Objective 4 talks about integrity of stream channels and biological function as well as drainage. But we do know that there are some properties, some residents that have an easement that has a drainage piece that kind of cuts through the property. How is that maintained? Who maintains it? Who's responsible for it? And so forth. I think somehow we need to cover that.
Yeah, and actually, just that point, Tom, some of these are actually tributaries to the Passaic that are on people's
Yeah.
on property, and they can't be, they can't really be worked on.
They can't be accessed, or is that or?
It's, I think you can't use any machinery on them, certainly, so you can go in there and kind of like, hand dig them, but that's it.
Old fashioned.
Are there actual easements that run through those properties or not?
There's a
There
record.
probably
Yes.
There is an
yes.
issue with one
Yes.
property that was made aware of to
Right.
the township committee that there is a. It's
Because I think of the tributary right by the senior center. The senior center tributary always seems to back up, right by the auto guy there, right across from the senior center.
That's
going up into
town-owned
that-
land.
Yeah, all the
Right.
back there, that is particularly poor, because a bunch
Right.
of friends live down there, and they get flooded, seriously flooded right up
Right.
to the house. So I would certainly
Right.
support
But that,
anything
a
we
lot of
can
that is just
address.
clearing the channel because it
and- yeah.
doesn't drain.
And who does that? And I think you're right, Brendan, who maintains that stuff?
Yeah,
And
yeah, I mean,
they
some
can
of them-
emphasise that.
Some of them we can't do too much,
Yeah.
even though it's our land, we can't.
Some of them are
it's
limited
DEP,
in what we can do. Yeah, yep,
Right.
yep. Environmental challenges.
But we do need to address some of these, because they are downtown, part of the flooding.
Yeah, I mean, I think, whatever we can do, I mean.
Yeah, I think it's good.
If we can work on it, that's something that we should,
Yeah,
that we
perfect.
should, it should tell us the town that we have to, that we should be working on.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah.
For what it is worth, as long as you're mentioning the last township committee meeting,
That's good.
the discussion was totally wrong about who owns the land and who's responsible for it. Totally wrong.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes. The last is sustainability goals. So this is the last element. Yes.
I read this sustainability thing, and then I said to myself, wait, don't we have a new element called climate change, and is this the same as the climate change element?
No.
No,
It's not. So I should read this as a sustainability element.
yeah.
And this is new business because?
So let me just step in for a second. So you have in the municipal land use law, you can have a sustainability element, but they did add this hazard mitigation, and so actually, as you probably noticed, the goal, it repeats in both. Because essentially, there's no other, there are other ways to phrase it, but it said, why not just put it in both? That it's both a land use, it's very important to land use, but it's also the sustainability. But there are aspects of sustainability that wouldn't be covered in the hazard mitigation. For example, there is no renewable energy ordinance in Long Hill, and you might want to, because people may start coming in and saying, you know what, we have this big parking
Right.
area, we want to put up a,
Perfect.
Well, that was at objective number 3. I wrote next to that, windmills on the hill.
It's fine.
yeah.
Is that the way we encourage renewable energy?
Well,
You
Uh,
could, s- you
Could
could
be
put,
better than the 70-foot tall tower that's now.
or you put
behind
solar
the
panels on top of
utility line.
ShotLight.
yeah,
And
right.
I don't know, at
you-
town hall, you put solar
If-
panels to
If
charge
encourage
electric
isn't, if
cars.
encourage isn't the right
Yeah.
word, it should be somehow, address it in some
Yeah.
way, probably through adoption of an ordinance.
Yep, perfect.
Adopt an ordinance for what?
You can adopt ordinances having to do, for example, in some towns, they will say that they'll give preference to putting solar panels, let's say, on top of ShopRite, where they'd rather ShopRite put them on,
Right,
just as a hypothetical, of course, but on top of the building than in the parking area.
that's right.
And so
Would this would this cost extra money to apply for a conditional use?
No, it depends, because, for example, in some towns, they'll say, listen, if you're going to do that, then you don't even have to get site plan.
Perfect. Perfect, done.
And-
So Liz, just to clarify, so again, what we had decided, because I'm talking about, so in land use goal 3, that's probably where we would have the climate vulnerability assessment, because that relates back to land use.
Exactly, and that's what's
then the-
required by law. And I
That's the
think,
new requirement
Right.
that we've been talking about.
Get in there, get in there.
And sustainability would be more along the lines of the renewables and things of that sort.
I think you guys did a really good job.
Get in there, right? Good.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
process.
I
Making
absolutely,
sausage.
I absolutely echo those, those,
What's next on the schedule for the master plan committee?
Well, what's next is, I guess we'll make a couple of tweaks to this. We'll share another, round of draft, but I think we're getting a consensus here. I don't think we really procedurally need a vote necessarily. I think we have a consensus to move forward into task 2 with the understanding that we're gonna tweak these goals and refine them as part of task 1. But we gotta get moving on into the recommendations now. So there's gonna be a series of steps where we're gonna continue to meet. We meet about every other week.
Yep.
The off-week meetings of the planning board. And I'll come back in the next meeting with a report as to when we'll be ready for our first sit-down on the recommendations.
Well, yeah, I thought we were going to discuss the recommendations that are open. I mean, we've already discussed, last year, we discussed Valley Road, the business district, and we discussed Main Avenue. We still have other issues to discuss,
Right.
including your favorite,
Gillette.
and Myersville and Barrett and those
Right.
issues, and I assume you're going to have standalone discussions with the
Yeah.
planning board on each of those?
I think that's the easiest way to break them out, is to look at each of these areas, and I think we have a pretty good list. So that's one of the things, the first thing we're gonna do now, going into the next phase or next task, is identify and get a whole list of these areas. But we already know several of them
Yeah,
that we can
right.
start.
We've got them.
Yeah.
Just a point of
And this-
clarification, you use the word vote. There will be no voting on anything until the public hearings.
Right,
Right.
okay. Well, I mean,
Right.
just, I guess, vote, where
I
we can
just
move
wanted to
forward.
say that for
that's
the
fair.
public
Right.
who's
Consent.
listening, yes.
That's
No voting until
Right,
public
Okay.
hearings are noticed, et cetera.
understood.
Moving on.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other committee reports? Do we have any old or new business?
Just change the clock.
Yes.
No, the clock is still running in February time.
It's good to see everybody in person.
Amen.
Yes.
I would say to the
But it
board,
will be correct in November.
Twice a year, right?
Tune in again.
I will say to the board does not have anything scheduled for your next meeting on April 12th.
So we're going to look to you, Don, again to bring us some good stuff to talk about?
Actually, just very quickly, the resolution we didn't vote on,
We were doing that, yes.
so we will come, we'll have to
Yes, I
attend,
mean, we
have a
can-
meeting regardless.
Well, we could, but that can be
No.
carried until the
That can be carried.
26th.
I just wondered about expediency.
Well, they don't have sewer, so
There's an,
if
there's
the
a point.
chairman and vice chairman decide that the 12th is canceled,
Fine, whatever.
that can be
I've got
moved.
enough.
yeah, that's easy peasy.
All right, fair enough.
So,
Well, I apologize for suggesting a break because I don't think anybody wants to take a break now.
No. No.
That's most certainly.
Alan,
Motion to adjourn?
out of respect for you, I'll let you make the next motion.
I did.
Second.
Nice, thank you.
All in favour?
Favor?
Aye.
Aye,
All right, thanks, everybody.
thanks.